I'm reading The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. And I know I've read a whole bunch of books since we've spoken last. They're not front of mind, but that's the one that I'm currently reading. So I just thought it was worthwhile exploring and talking about. And it was a really confronting kind of exercise to go through that book. Really confronting.
He's done. So I've read The Righteous Mind, which was
Mm.
his book. I think it was one of his earlier ones. Brilliant book. It's not a big read.
That's next on my to-do list, I think.
It's so here it is. I actually went camping and I had water spill on it, so half of the pages are kind of cooked. But it's a really great book. The subtitle is Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion, and
Mm.
Haidt is a social psychologist, right? So he's looking at a lot of the ways people differ, as opposed to a sociologist, which is the ways in which groups differ. But he's looking at sort of the evolutionary causes as to why certain individuals with different ideas might have proclivities to become more conservative or progressive or whatever it is. And then he put out The Coddling of the American Mind, right?
Yeah.
So the book you're reading is a lovely segue. I think you can just sort of see the natural progression of his research moving into anxiety. But is the book based specifically on children and adolescents, or is it anxiety for all of us?
I mean, the distance that I've gotten through it now, it's definitely based around the he breaks it down into the upbringing of children and adolescents and understanding and he calls it the phone age, and he deciphers the difference between people like you and I growing up with television, and even our parents growing up with television being a very different experience to phones, iPads, but also the advent of the front-facing camera in phones being that next step, which was around 2010, I think, and the self-image ramifications that brings up for kids who don't have fully formed minds and don't have a fully formed or even partially formed understanding of self and who they are, and they're just learning all of these things and how unbelievably detrimental these experiences can be, and these, I suppose, this is the reality that we find ourselves with a lot of these young kids. So he does draw a delineation between the use of technology in adults and children, and he's so clear in the understanding that adults have fully formed minds to a certain degree and have mechanisms to be able to, I suppose, negotiate and navigate the external world that we live in. And young children are really, really struggling with that.
I mean, it's funny that he says that, right? Like, the brain being fully formed at 24. I'm 31. You're in your early 40s. It's there's 10 years between you and I, isn't there?
11.
11
I'm
years.
42.
42.
11.
42.
Turn it up to 11.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, very good. $4,000 of podcast marketing money for whoever can get the source of that quote. Very important quote. Very, very important quote. I'll give you a clue. Redback. That's correct, right?
I haven't got that right. Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Spider.
Mm,
That's a massive hint.
that's a big one. Okay.
Too big. Yeah. Give it away. Luke Skywalker is Darth Vader's son, by the way, everyone. Just so you know.
Just to let you know.
Spoiler alert. So this is interesting stuff, right? Because the main reason I would say that I deleted Instagram was because of my anxiety. I wasn't even on there that much, but it was just overwhelming, and you're constantly looking at other people's lives with the negativity bias that we have installed within this evolutionary technology, right? We're looking at, oh, I'm worse than them. I'm not doing as good as him. Oh, I'm not as good looking as him. And, constant. I mean, I was in my late 20s by the time I did that. So I can't imagine what it's like being 12, seeing this stuff.
And that's it. And the very fact, like, that that you have the self awareness to be able to reflect and self examine and say, this is not good for me. kids that are pubescent or prepubescent don't have those tools to be able to do that, right? Like, so you said this exercise that I'm going through daily is not serving me, but kids are just flung into a reality, and it's a double-edged sword. He talks additionally not just about the reality where they see themselves in the social media canon or the reality or this kind of world that they're in, but it's also the retraction from outdoor play and being able to associate and engage and navigate physical interaction with other children and being able to navigate how to conduct conversations and to be able to navigate rough play with them.
Mm.
Because he also, I'm kind of jumping around a bit, but he talks a lot about um, the generation of parents that have grown up around the 90s really started to handle their children with cotton gloves. Is that the expression? Uh, and that, in his mind, is a very, very bad thing because it's not giving children the mechanisms to be able to um, sort that shit out on their own, to be
Yeah.
able to give them the tools. So then when they enter the real world, they are just hopeless when it comes to resilience, being able to understand how to have a simple conversation with another, having a difficult conversation as well. So it goes deep, and I'm not even a fraction of the way into the book.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so you're reading this. Every story, whether it's nonfiction or fiction, goes through that sort of trial and conflict where you start to feel like the world's about to end, especially when you read a book like this, right? Before it peaks in a lovely, hopefully optimistic way. But based upon where you are in the book, Paulie, how do you feel about the world that we live in currently, especially being a dad?
Um, Look, it's a really difficult one because even someone who is genuinely interested in this and is aware of all of this, because of the way I've been brought up by a very overprotective mother, anxious. Um, you know, I can't help but for some of that to come out and think of worst case scenarios. If I let my kids play in the street on their own, I think about the worst case scenario. So it's interesting going through that self reflection process for me, thinking, okay, my instinct is to protect, protect, protect. Um, and I understand also that I'm potentially, not preparing my children for the best thing. So I think it's about understanding how to do this in stages, especially where we're at. Understanding that I know that living an existence in front of an iPad or an iPhone is just not a good thing. And it's not preparing kids to be able to actually develop their minds in a serious way. Forget about, all of the, all of the things that they're associated with in social media,
Right.
which we're all clear on is not great at all. So there's a lot going on there for me, but it's given me pause to reflect on how I've been parenting and how I would like to be parenting in the future as well,
Right.
which is great. Yeah, it's really good.
It's funny you talk about the difference between our generation and the current generation, or the generation sort of growing up in that prepubescent moment. I really think I was on the cusp, So I was born in 1993, and my childhood memories are still in that era of pre-technology. Obviously, television was around, and authors like David Foster Wallace were talking about the issues with television, and he grew up in the 70s.
Yeah.
But I think with the way it is now and how convenient it is to be able to distract yourself from the present moment, we didn't really have that. I can remember playing cricket in the street. You weren't really even allowed to come back inside until it was getting dark because parents need to prepare dinner and all that sort of stuff. So get the fuck out, you know. But also, like, really, I have a very visceral memory of playing with a slinky at my friend's back staircase up to his attic, and loving it. And we were just playing with this slinky for like 6 hours. And it was so, so good.
So good. And like I see that with my daughter as well, because I'm tactfully creating separation between technology use and the ability for her to be able to be self-driven, and to be able to utilize simple tools to be able to amuse herself and entertain herself. And she loves that stuff, the simple stuff. It's like innate in humans to be able to go foraging. Like both of my kids have just absolutely loved going foraging for sticks, stones, flowers.
Hard drugs.
Heart, definitely, definitely.
Yeah, foraging.
It's been and they love that stuff, and it's just about keeping an eye on what is a safe amount of exposure to that kind of technology, but being able to do the simple stuff, and also the dangerous play and rough play is something that I'm look. My eldest is a natural curious mind, so she's always from 2 years old. She's been climbing up to the highest thing she could possibly climb to. And once you get over that initial fear, it's like, what's the worst that could happen? Okay, she could break a bone. Hopefully that's the worst that could happen. But
Hopefully.
but it's like, what is she going to gain out of that experience?
Yeah.
Climbing up to the second level branch of a tree, and then a month later finding that she can climb to that next branch in the tree. That's opening her mind,
Exactly. Yep.
and
Yep.
it's kind of a metaphor, but it's also a very powerful tool for her to understand that she's capable of being able to do these things and ride the edge.
Right, right. So I think you're touching on something that's really interesting, and you look at what's going on in with sports like jujitsu. Jujitsu schools are popping up everywhere
Yeah,
because what you've got there is rough play in a safe, contained structure. And
yeah,
when we hear rough play, it's sort of an ambiguous or it's a broad term, right? But really, what we're speaking to here, and I took this from Jonathan Haidt's work as well, is that you're actually learning about the boundaries of your own physical body. You're learning what it can and can't do.
yeah,
And you think about the implications of that, where when you're really angry, imagine you don't know what your body can do, right?
absolutely,
That's dangerous versus
absolutely.
knowing what it can do and then knowing how to therefore control emotions like anger, which we can't ever get rid of. That's not
No,
that's ridiculous, right? So actually learning about, I mean, the obvious metaphor is just driving a car and never having learned how to drive, but just doing it. Without rough play, you're not going to get those really important lessons. And sometimes you stall a car, sometimes, whatever it is, but you have to do that. It's just funny that it's I come across like someone who just like this dumb arrogant guy off in a hill who knew all this stuff to begin with. Of course I didn't, but what I love about his research and this discussion here is you learn these things, you understand these concepts, and you have this duh moment. You're like,
yeah,
of course, how did I not see that?
it's the simplicity of it all, right? Like, it's unbelievable. It really is. And you look at the socialization of kids, or the lack of socialization in the real world, in this phone age that Jonathan talks about. And whilst some people can contain, social media as being social, the amount of tools that are not being utilized that have been a part of our everyday, like our birthright to be humans, are not being utilized. Community, okay, part of a Facebook group, not community the way that we are, like bred to be a part of a community. Understanding body language, communicating with people, picking up a phone. Obviously, phones are not part of the human genome, but like having a conversation one on one with somebody as opposed to texting, two lettered words through abbreviations. These are things that are it's just a new reality, that a lot of people are unable to escape.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's weird, and I suppose I have sympathy in for parents and hopefully my future self as well. It's like you also can't pretend that this technology isn't pervasive or doesn't exist. It's
No,
there. So we have to
absolutely.
learn how to work with it, and I think from the last I heard of Jonathan Haidt talk about it, he's pretty big on it not being a part of a child or a teenager's life until they're sort of 16 or something like that.
Yeah, definitely not social media until then. And, it's like having the courage to be able to, go against the grain as your children grow up and your child comes to you and, Jeff and Stacy have got iPhones and I've only, I don't have anything. It's like, cool, have a Motorola flip phone
Right,
from
right. Well, Jeff and Stacey
2003.
stuck. Nah, no offense, Jeff and Stacey.
But being able to have the courage to be able to I suppose just slow down that process to a certain degree until they have their faculties to be able to navigate exactly what is going on with the self-awareness that you've just displayed with what you've been talking about in your own experience, and being able to say, whoa, I actually need to regulate myself here and my own behavior, and the way I'm going to be able to do that is get the fuck out of Dodge.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean,